I want to introduce you to something today, an acronym that I use a lot in my work because it names something that doesn't get named nearly often enough. It's called FOPO, fear of other people's opinions. Now, I know that might sound slightly clinical or perhaps obvious. Of course, people worry about what others think. Doesn't everyone? Well, yeah, they do, but FOPO is something more than ordinary social awareness. It's when the fear of what other people might think becomes a governing force in your life. When it's not just informing your choices, it's making them. And in my experience, that's far more common than most people are prepared to admit. FOPO doesn't usually arrive in adulthood. It forms long before that. Children are exquisitely sensitive to social signals. They learn very quickly what earns approval and what earns disapproval, and over time they begin to shape their behaviour accordingly. Not because they're calculating, but because they're human. We're wired for belonging. The problem is that many of us carry those calibrations into adult life long after they've stopped being useful. The grown adult who won't speak up in a meeting isn't usually responding to a genuine threat. They're responding to a pattern laid down decades earlier. FOPO becomes, as I put it, an invisible gravity, pulling constantly in the direction of what's safe, what's expected, what will attract the least criticism. Here's what makes FOPO genuinely tricky to spot. It rarely announces itself as fear. It looks like humility when you downplay something you're genuinely proud of. It looks like consideration when you go along with a decision you privately disagree with. It looks like professionalism when you hold back an idea because you're not sure how it will land. It looks like maturity when you suppress a feeling because expressing it might make someone else uncomfortable. None of those things are wrong in themselves, but when they become the default, when FOPO is driving so consistently that it shapes the whole direction of a life, the cost adds up. The career not pursued because it seemed impractical. The opinion not voiced because it might cause friction. The life not lived because it wasn't quite legible to others. If FOPO was already a powerful force before social media, it's been given an extraordinary new set of tools since. The ability to compare yourself instantly with anyone, to gauge your worth by the response your choices receive, to present a version of your life for appraisal, and then live inside the anxiety of that appraisal. FOPO, in this environment, can start to feel less like a personal quirk and more like a reasonable response to social pressure. In some ways, it is. The fear isn't imaginary, but the question worth asking is whether you want that fear to be in charge. Now, I'm not suggesting that FOPO can be eliminated entirely or that it should be. We're social creatures. The regard of others matters to us, and that's not inherently problematic. The question is one of proportion. What I've found, both in my own life and in working with others, is that as values clarify and self-knowledge deepens, FOPO gradually loses its grip. Approval stops being the primary compass. Choices begin to reflect genuine values rather than social calculation. What becomes possible in that shift is quietly significant. Conversations that were previously avoided, decisions that feel genuinely yours, a growing sense of living inside your own life rather than performing it for an audience. I'll leave you with one question, and I'd encourage you to sit with it honestly rather than answering it quickly. In the choices that you're currently making, how much of what you're doing is genuinely yours? And how much is shaped by what you imagine other people expect? I'll explore FOPO and what it takes to loosen its grip in Living from the Heart, the first book in the Heart series. You'll find more at bernardcates.com. The link's in the description. See you next time.